Good morning, Alex and friends. I'm Grace. Today is Thursday, July 2nd, 2026, and you're listening to Alex's News. In Riverside, we are looking at a high of 83.2 degrees and a low of 60.7. It looks like a beautiful day to be outside. Coming up, we are breaking down the recent Supreme Court decisions and what they mean for the future of citizenship and the rights of student athletes. We will also examine the massive heat dome currently threatening millions of people across the United States. In addition to these main features, we have a variety of other important updates to share with you as we keep you informed on the events shaping our world. All of this and more coming up on Alex's News. Stay tuned as we get right into the stories. Good morning. On June 30th, the Supreme Court closed its term with two big 6-3 rulings, one upholding birthright citizenship and another on transgender athletes. Ethan, walk us through what happened.
Good morning, Grace. So you may remember we covered the birthright citizenship decision earlier this week. Well, the full picture is now clearer. In the case called Trump versus Barbara, the court rejected President Trump's attempt to abolish birthright citizenship. That challenge came from an executive order Trump signed on his first day back in office, declaring that children born here to undocumented parents or immigrant parents without permanent status would no longer be granted citizenship.
And the court said that order simply couldn't stand?
That's right. The justices ruled that birthright citizenship is a right enshrined in the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. Now, reports from My Northwest and SCOTUS blog clarify something interesting about how the majority came together. It wasn't a clean 6-3 block on the reasoning. There was actually a split in the opinion itself, which is worth understanding.
How so? Who wrote for the majority?
Chief Justice John Roberts authored the majority opinion, and he was joined by Justices Amy Coney Barrett, Sonia Sotomayor, Elena Kagan, and Ketanji Brown Jackson. But then Justice Brett Kavanaugh concurred in the judgment while taking a narrower path. He argued the executive order violated federal statute rather than the Constitution itself. So he agreed on the outcome, but not entirely on the why.
Interesting. And who dissented?
The three dissenters were Justices Clarence Thomas, Samuel Alito, and Neil Gorsuch. They would have let the president's order proceed, but the majority was firm, and Chief Justice Roberts wrote some memorable language in the decision. He said, quote, "Citizenship, then and now, was the right to have rights, to freely participate in our political community," end quote. And he added, quote, "We keep that promise today," end quote.
That's powerful. How did immigration advocates respond to all this?
According to Democracy Now!, the ruling was met with real celebration among immigration rights advocates. One of the notable voices was Illinois Democratic Congressmember Delia Ramirez, who is the daughter of Guatemalan immigrants. She emphasized that anyone born in the United States is an American, without exception. And reports from the Boston Herald and the OC Register described the ruling as a significant blow to the Trump administration's broader immigration agenda.
Now, this wasn't the only major decision that day. There was a second ruling on transgender athletes, correct?
That's right, and this one went very differently. On the same day, the court ruled 6-3 that states have the authority to bar transgender student athletes from participating on girls' and women's sports teams. Unlike the citizenship case, this decision split strictly along ideological lines. All the conservative justices formed the majority, and the three liberal justices dissented. It upheld existing state bans in Idaho and West Virginia.
So what was the court's actual legal reasoning there?
As reported by KVOA, which is News for Tucson, the court explicitly stated that these bans do not violate the Constitution's Equal Protection Clause. And it said they don't conflict with Title IX either, that's the federal law preventing sex discrimination in schools. So the justices essentially cleared the way for states that want these restrictions. It's a meaningful shift in how these questions will be handled going forward.
Does this mean every state now has to bar transgender athletes?
No, and that's a really important distinction. The ruling allows states to implement such bans, but it does not require them to do so. So the 23 states that currently allow transgender students to play on teams aligning with their gender identity, including California, may continue their inclusive policies. In other words, this decision opens a door rather than forcing anyone through it. The real action now moves to state legislatures and courts.
I imagine reaction to that one was intense on both sides.
Deeply divided, Grace. On the side supporting the ruling, Arizona State Superintendent of Public Instruction Tom Horn and Chino Valley Unified School Board member Sonia Shaw hailed the decision as a victory for, quote, common sense, end quote. They framed it as protecting biological girls, athletic opportunities, and scholarships. For them, this was a long-sought win.
And the advocates on the other side?
LGBTQ advocates and legal experts expressed devastation. Noreen Farrell of Equal Rights Advocates told KPBS that the ruling furthers a, quote, widespread attack on civil rights protections, end quote, and an attempt to erase transgender individuals. And Gaye Esposito, a transgender woman who works with youth, noted that the ruling creates a more discriminatory environment for young people. So you can hear how personal this feels for the communities affected.
What about California specifically? The state has been vocal on these issues.
California Attorney General Rob Bonta said his office is reviewing the decision to determine how it affects other state lawsuits and how it relates to Title IX going forward. He reaffirmed California's commitment to inclusive school environments. So while the court gave states more latitude, California is signaling it intends to keep its current policies. Expect more legal wrangling in the months ahead as states sort out where they stand.
And is there any immediate test of this coming up somewhere?
There is, actually. KVOA reported that the ruling arrives just as Arizona voters prepare to decide on a November ballot measure. That measure would require students to use private spaces, showers, and locker rooms based on their biological sex. So this Supreme Court decision lands right in the middle of an active political fight. Voters there will effectively weigh in on these questions themselves in a few months.
So stepping back, we have one ruling expanding protections and another restricting them on the same day.
Exactly, and that contrast really captures where the court is right now. On birthright citizenship, you saw a cross-ideological majority defending a constitutional right dating back to the 14th Amendment. But on transgender athletes, you saw that familiar 6-3 conservative-liberal divide. Both were 6-3, yet they tell very different stories about how these justices approach civil rights. It's a term that ended with real complexity.
Ethan, thank you for breaking all of that down for us this morning.
My pleasure, Grace. We'll keep tracking how states respond, especially with that Arizona vote coming in November.
Good morning, everyone. A dangerous heat dome has settled over much of the country, right as we head into a historic holiday weekend. Our reporter Chloe has been tracking it all. Chloe, good morning. Just how big is this thing?
Good morning, Grace. It's enormous. As of today, July 2nd, this heat dome is blanketing the central and eastern United States, and the numbers are staggering. Estimates suggest somewhere between 200 million and 250 million people are feeling the effects. And the timing couldn't be more dramatic, because this lands right on the July 4th weekend, which marks the 250th anniversary of the United States.
A heat dome. I hear that term a lot, but what exactly is happening up there?
It's a great question. According to Al Jazeera, a heat dome forms when a large area of high pressure traps warm air close to the ground. Think of it like a lid clamped onto the atmosphere. As that air sinks, it compresses and warms even further, and it blocks cooler air or storms from moving in. That creates a feedback loop with few clouds and little wind, so the sun just cooks the surface directly.
So how hot are we actually talking here?
The National Weather Service is flat out calling these conditions dangerous. Many areas will see daytime temperatures in the low 100s Fahrenheit, but the humidity is the real problem. That's expected to push the heat index between 100 and 115 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 40 to 46 degrees Celsius. Forecasters say dozens of temperature records could fall, and WJCL 22 News reports about 93 million people will be under extreme heat risk by Friday.
Extreme heat risk. That sounds serious. What makes that designation stand out?
It really is rare, Grace. That label signals long-duration heat, with no overnight cooling, and that's the dangerous part. Normally, when the sun goes down, temperatures drop, and your body gets a chance to recover. But under this dome, overnight lows are expected to stay in the 70s Fahrenheit, the 20s Celsius. So heat stress just keeps building day after day, and that's when it becomes life-threatening.
Let's talk geography. Which parts of the country are getting hit the hardest?
The worst conditions are concentrated in a broad corridor stretching from the Great Lakes all the way to the East Coast. We're talking New York City, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., Baltimore, Chicago, Detroit, Indianapolis, and St. Louis. And it's not just the Northeast and Midwest. Soaring temperatures are also being reported down in Dallas, Little Rock, and Memphis. It's a huge swath of the map under this same dangerous pattern.
You mentioned New York. What's the city doing to protect people there?
New York has actually declared a heat emergency, according to NBC New York. Mayor Zohran Mamdani's office is calling its response unprecedented. They're deploying hydration vans and setting up pop-up cooling stations equipped with misting fans and cooling towels. And here's a striking detail, Grace. Central Park could see its first 100-degree day since 2012. That gives you a sense of just how unusual this heat really is for the city.
And of course, Washington has a huge celebration planned. How's the Capitol handling it?
That's the tricky part. Temperatures in Washington, D.C. are expected to top 100 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 38 Celsius, from Thursday right through Saturday. And that lines up exactly with the largest fireworks display ever held on the National Mall. So you've got potentially record crowds gathering for a historic celebration, all while the heat index is climbing into dangerous territory. Officials are going to have their hands full keeping people safe.
What about the other big cities in that corridor?
Chicago is opening cooling centers and sending workers out to check on vulnerable residents, the elderly, and people without air conditioning. And Philadelphia is making some interesting adjustments. Because of the heat, the organizers of the FIFA World Cup fan festivals have actually shifted their hours to start later in the day, specifically to avoid that peak afternoon heat. So you're seeing major public events reshaped around the weather, which tells you how seriously communities are taking this.
Let's turn to health. Who's most at risk in conditions like these?
This is the part experts really want people to hear. The National Weather Service and AccuWeather both stress that this heat is impactful to everyone, no matter your age or how fit you are. The biggest danger is that lack of overnight relief. When temperatures stay in the 70s Fahrenheit overnight, your body never gets to fully cool down. So heat stress accumulates day after day, and even healthy people can find themselves in trouble.
So what should folks actually be doing to stay safe?
The advice from Al Jazeera and AccuWeather is pretty practical. Seek out air conditioning or cooling centers whenever you can. Drink water before you even feel thirsty. And go easy on the alcohol. Wear loose, lightweight clothing and stay in the shade. And critically, watch for the warning signs. That's dizziness, or the inability to sweat even though you feel hot. Those are red flags that your body is in real distress.
You mentioned early casualties. What have we already seen?
Unfortunately, yes. According to findings from AOL, nearly 20 ROTC cadets, all under the age of 18, were hospitalized just yesterday, July 1st. This happened in Hamptonburg, in Orange County. They were treated for dehydration and heat exhaustion after the air conditioning failed on their coach bus. It's a sobering reminder that this heat can turn dangerous very quickly, especially for young people in an enclosed space with no way to cool off.
Now, not everyone is baking, right? I understand the West Coast is having very different weather.
That's right, and it's a striking contrast. California and the West Coast are actually enjoying what forecasters are calling fantastically comfortable and mild weather right now. Inland temperatures are sitting in the mid-80s to mid-90s. The reason is directly tied to the eastern heat dome. Because all that high pressure is parked in the east, it's left lower pressure air out west, which keeps things pleasant. So it's essentially two sides of the same weather coin.
But that won't last, will it? What's the outlook going forward?
No, it likely won't. Reports via USA Today and AOL suggest the pattern is going to shift. The heat dome is expected to move westward by July 6th or 7th, so just a few days after the holiday weekend. And the Climate Prediction Center predicts that 100-plus degree days will likely return to the Pacific states by mid-July. So the West's comfortable spell may be short-lived, and that relief could evaporate quickly.
So really, before this is over, a huge chunk of the country will have felt it in one way or another.
Exactly, Grace. Between the East and Midwest suffering now and the West bracing for its turn in the coming weeks, this is shaping up to be a nationwide story. The big takeaway is that this isn't a one-day event. It's long-duration heat with those dangerous overnight temperatures, and it's arriving during one of the busiest travel and celebration weekends of the year. So the message from every agency is the same: take it seriously and look out for one another.
That's such an important reminder, especially heading into the 4th. Chloe, thank you so much for breaking this all down for us this morning.
My pleasure, Grace. Stay cool out there, everyone.
Here are some other headlines. Turning our attention to the high-stakes world of diplomacy, things are heating up in Qatar. On Wednesday, July 1st, 2026, U.S. and Iranian negotiators met separately with mediators from Qatar and Pakistan. The U.S. sent in the big guns with Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, while Kazem Garibabadi led the charge for Iran. Qatar is reporting that positive progress was made, and both sides are eager to keep the conversation flowing. However, the timeline is currently on hold as the world waits for the funeral of the late Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, which begins this Saturday in Tehran. Once the dust settles, spokesperson Majed Al-Ansari says the next meeting will be scheduled at the earliest possible time. Now, let's dive into the deep end of the agenda. The talks touched on the Strait of Hormuz, where things are getting a bit knotty. Iran is claiming control over vessel routes, but the U.S. and Gulf Arab states are refusing to pay the piper regarding passage charges. Vice President J.D. Vance also signaled that the U.S. is ready to split the atom and begin talking about the nuclear issue. Meanwhile, Iran is calling for a ceasefire between Hezbollah and Israel, urging Israel to hand back occupied land in southern Lebanon. To top it off, Iranian state media says they are chatting with mediators about thawing out some of their frozen assets. Switching gears to the ballot box, Colorado is seeing a real shakeup. In a primary that truly flipped the script, 29-year-old attorney and Democratic socialist Malat Quiros defeated longtime incumbent Representative Diana DeGette for Colorado's 1st congressional district. Quiros, who had the wind in her sails thanks to endorsements from the Democratic Socialists of America and Senator Bernie Sanders, will now face Republican nominee Christy Peterson. Peterson, an accountant who cruised through her primary uncontested, will be fighting for a seat that the Cook Political Report considers solidly Democratic. In more state news, Attorney General Phil Weiser has officially won the Democratic primary for governor, beating out Senator Michael Bennet. Finally, a sobering report from Amnesty International regarding the crisis in Sudan. Research released July 1st reveals that the Rapid Support Forces committed ethnic cleansing and crimes against humanity during the fall of El Fasher in October 2025. The report details a systematic attack on the Zagawa people, involving the abduction, killing, and forced recruitment of children. Heart-wrenching footage has identified several perpetrators, including Commander Al-Fateh Abdullah Idris, known as Abu Lulu, who was seen executing captives. Major General Ghetto Hamdan Ahmed Mohammed, or Abu Shok, and Lieutenant Colonel Abbas Kader Bakid are also accused of directing torture and illicit payments. Secretary General Agnes Callamard is now calling for an international force to step in and protect civilians before more lives are lost. That's all we have for now. Today's episode was made by Alexander King with Claude Opus 4.8, Gemini Pro 3.1, Gemini Flash 3, and Google Cloud Text-to-Speech. I hope you have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow, Alex.